Welcome to this week's edition of the Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight, brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meigs Independent Press.
I'm Brent Rose, and today we're going to do something a little different on the Community Spotlight, sponsored by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy. Today, we have Carrie Rose, owner and journalist at the Meigs Independent Press. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning.
And I'm not real good at this, just so everybody knows. I'm normally the guy behind the camera. So I'm going to ask some questions. I've got my notes here on the phone, and we're going to interview you instead of you interviewing everybody else.
Which is not exactly comfortable for me either, so this should be interesting.
Okay.
At least it should be entertaining.
All right. First off, congratulations on your new office in Racine.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a few questions. You know how this goes.
Yeah.
You've been there and done this a couple times.
Uh-huh.
First off, what made you want to be a news reporter?
Well, that goes back to the Meigs County Fair. There's a lot that goes back to the Meigs County Fair for me that I became interested in journalism. I took writing projects through 4-H. That, though, was preceded by an event where my father used to have a polled Hereford farm, and we used to take a lot of cattle out to the fair. And what ended up happening was we were out at the fair. My cousin was in during that time. She hadn't got to go to a county fair like that, so she was out there enjoying that. We had our cowboy hats and our boots and our jeans, and we were dressed up for the occasion. And Charlene Hoflick was there, and she wanted to get a picture. Of course, Dad won a lot of Grand Champion ribbons, yeah. And so she wanted to take her picture with his Grand Champion. I think we had a couple bulls out there at the time. So she did that, and I thought she was just so amazing. It was the first time I had ever seen in person a woman in a non-traditional role. I'd seen teachers, my mother's a nurse, that kind of thing, but I'd never seen a woman doing something that wasn't, at that time, it was a little more outside the box. I mean, you'd see things on TV, but this is the first time I saw someone in person. So I started paying attention to her all week during the fair. I'd see her all over the place. I'd see her doing things. And I started reading the newspaper. I started paying attention to news as far as in the evening news, watching the news. But I started reading the newspaper, and I was like 7 years old. So I started paying attention to those things. I started looking at how every aspect of it, from the way that the newspaper was laid out and designed to reading and everything else. And that's where I got the first interest, the first idea of being that. And I used to dream about the idea of having my own newspaper, although at that point, the internet wasn't around, and it was something that would be, that's a pretty impossible dream at that point. So to be able to finally have that is pretty amazing.
Cool. All right. Why did you start your business in Meigs County?
Well, basically, I had been through a divorce, and I was starting my life over, and I was a single parent. I had one child that was still at home, and she really wanted to go to Meigs High School. She wanted to stay here. We had the options, and I had opportunities elsewhere, but she really wanted to stay in Meigs County. So, and she wanted to go to Meigs High School. So I said, okay, then I got to find out a way to do this. I got to figure out a way to do that without having, I had my parents around, but they weren't always available. So I needed to be able to be flexible to get her to band practice, to be able to do, different things that I needed to be able to do because she was a freshman. So what could I do? Well, I couldn't find a job. I tried to find a job here, and I couldn't find one. So I decided I'm going to make one. And I looked at my skills and ability of what I had, and then of course the internet was available, and I found that there were people like me who had journalism experience that decided to start up using the internet their own website for news. And I thought, well, I could actually realize a lifelong dream of owning my own newspaper, but it's going to be on the internet and not in print. So basically, in order to be able to stay here, I created a job to be able to stay here for my daughter, and then it just went from there.
Cool. What are your goals going forward with the Meg's Independent Press?
Continue to grow, grow, grow. That was one of the things with having the office there in Racine. This is I've had places where I've kind of had office space, but it's not been a dedicated office that we could do interviews in, that we could do different things in, that was a really nice space to be able to do that. So that's part of it. We are starting sports coming up with the beginning of football season, and then we'll go through all the school sports and everything. Very excited about that. And we're not just focusing on, when I say sports, I had kids in band. And if you've had a kid in band, that includes band. Sports are not just limited to what we traditionally think. Other thing is, I've also talked to Ben Neese with as far as being able to include the karate and everything else, the different things that they have going on. When we talk about sports, I want to encompass everything, and definitely want to focus on being able to cover girls' sports, because they typically get underrated and left out, and as a female, I know what that's like.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone starting out as a news reporter, like me?
Well, it's very hard. It's a very hard field, and a lot of people don't understand how hard it is, or how difficult it can be. One of the things that I always try to tell young journalists that are willing to listen is that you need to listen. You need to listen to what people are telling you, but you need to understand, and this is throwing it back to, if you know me, you know that I like sci-fi and I like comic books and I like that kind of stuff, because
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. But I go back to, with great power comes great responsibility. Your words matter as a journalist. So what you say matters, and how you say it matters. And you really have to be careful what you do. You have to be careful what you put out there, and you have to make sure that you check your sources. You have to make sure you're accurate. Sometimes being first isn't always the best. And you know, the best thing that you can do is try to always make sure that you're fair, that you check your personal bias as much as possible, and that you don't play politics. Stay out of politics as much as possible.
So in other words, opinion is not news.
Opinion is not news, and I thoroughly believe that. There's nothing more useless in the world than a journalist's opinion. No one cares. That's just not, to me. I don't like the shows that give journalists opinion, because it's pretty useless. I would say too is, be careful. The images you put out there, like at Rex and things like that. Those are the images that those people will have in their minds forever. I'm pretty sensitive about that, because I think that the only way that we're going to have better news and better journalism is to train journalists better, but also train consumers better. So we need to train the consumers of news better, which was another thing that I forgot about growing. Is one of the things that we got to do this summer. I got to be involved in working with Southern for their summer academy. Mm-hmm. And I got to teach some things, which I have a little bit of a teaching background too, so I got to teach some things on news and fact and opinion, and how sometimes the picture may not tell the story accurately, and a couple things. So I've developed a couple lessons on that, with the idea that we train better consumers of news. And that is something that I'm looking forward to being able to get into all the schools and work with, and just a couple little lessons, but maybe it also coordinates with what the state standards are, and it's kind of a help to the teachers. I think, but that's something that, don't complain about a problem, find a solution. And that's, to me, that's a way of changing my little corner of the world.
Okay. A couple more questions here. This one is something that a lot of people don't know. And when I heard this story, I thought this was touching, because everything has to have a meaning. I've got some tattoos on me, and they all have meanings. And I've had people that look at me that, that are 100% against tattoos, but after I explain to them what the meaning is, they look at you and nod your head, and they give you approval because it has meaning to that person. And the Meg's Independent Press logo is a star. Why did you choose a star as your logo?
Well, initially it was a nautical star, and there were 3 of them, and my brother David Gleckner designed that, and we kind of morphed it over the years, because as I got into it, I was more of, I needed something with a little bit more personal meaning for me, which most of the people, and I don't always tell this, very few people know what that logo means, because that's there for me, to keep me grounded. But if you look at it, it is a nautical star. There are 3 colors, red, black, and white. And I don't have one to use as an example, but I'll try to walk through it. If you start where it's red, there's light and dark in it, and that's to remind us that there is light and dark. There's things that we cover that are the light times, there's things we cover that are the dark times. There's the good and there's the bad, the positive and the negative, however you want to look at that. And that it's always changing. It's never always going to be the dark times. It's never always going to be the light times. You have to be prepared to go with that as a reporter. There are times where you may be reporting on something that's very nice and positive and a good community thing in the morning, and by the afternoon you may be covering something horrible like a fatal crash. So it's ebb and flow. The other thing is that you see there are 3 sections that are red, and that is on there for a very specific purpose. The red symbolizes the past, present, and future soldiers. It's hard for me to say this one. That gave all, so that I, through the First Amendment, could have freedom of the press to be able to do what I do. That means a lot to me, because I come from a family that's had a lot of military in it. Fortunately, my grandfather made it through World War II, and everybody made it, my family mainly made it through those things, but that sacrifice and those that didn't get to come home, that's what that represents. There is also, on the other side, you have the 3 red, and then you have the black and white. And that is a throwback to the reminding of the tradition and where it comes from, and the newspapers, and being able to, that whole tradition of everything and everybody that's gone before. Nellie Bly, that opened the door for women to be journalists, and her epic chance that she took with 10 days, that she told in the story 10 Days in a Madhouse. And if you don't know who Nellie Bly is, she was a woman who, at a time period where women didn't get to be journalists, and she convinced the editor to be able to let her really do an investigative story in how women were being treated in an insane asylum in New York City. And it was horrible, and she subjected herself to being that, and then she wrote about it. And because of that, there was reform and change, and there was a lot of things that happened because of it. That's what that black and white represents. All of that history and all of those that went before, even Charlene, that's how I became what I am, because of seeing her example. And then the top part is white and black, and that is to remind me that I'm to be right down the middle. That's where journalists are supposed to be, is right down the middle. We're not to be to the left, and we're not to be to the right. We're not to be on, Democratic or Republican or Green Party or Independent or whatever it is, we're to be right down the middle. And that is what I see every time I see that star, all those symbols and everything. Of course, I was an English major, so symbolism is a big deal, and that's what I think of every time that I see that. That's what the logo actually means.
Okay. Got one last question, and this is a surprise question because I know we walked over these because I'm new at this, definitely not on this side of the camera very much. And this one is one that I just pulled out at the last minute here.
Okay, okay.
Would you do it all over?
This has been there's been times where the lows have been lower than low and the highs have been higher than high. But I'd have to say yes, because there's been a couple of cases that I know, well, I won't get into the details of them, but I know that my writing made a difference. And I was told that by the people that were involved in it. So for that, yeah, it's not been easy. It's been very difficult. It was difficult in the beginning to get people to understand what it was and how it worked, and that is, you know, still news. It's just online. Now there's always challenges. There's always the tech. There's always trying to stay on top of the tech and wearing all the different hats and things like that. But would I do it over again? Yeah, because I don't know what else I would be doing. I mean, this is ingrained in who I am, and why would I leave my Meigs County home?
Well, I know that since my neck surgery and I've been off, and you've kind of thrown some stories at me to do that. It's
like I said, trying to keep you busy.
Trying to keep me busy, and
his mind was
you've got me stepping out of the box like today. And right now we're getting ready to go start the Meigs County Fair, and I've been involved in that for a long time, and you know, that's where your start with reporting come in. So you know, the fair's a big event, and
the fair is very special to both of us.
It's got a lot of meaning. So if you see Carrie out there at the fair, or you see me, I won't be signing autographs. She might be, but I'm
not signing autographs.
We just want to thank everybody out there for supporting the Meigs Independent Press. It's been a tough row, but it's a lot of fun. It's been 8 years. If I ever quit the job that I work at currently, I know I've got something I can step back to and at least keep me busy.
This, and I don't know, a lot of people don't necessarily realize that, but we started this on July 17th, 2013. It was the official first day of the Meigs Independent Press. But it was not until we had the fair in August. I had a booth there at the fair, and if you ever question the value of having something at the Meigs County Fair, I had a booth there that within the first 2 hours of just having the website name on there, the website crashed because of the traffic that we had on it. And it's just grown from there. But in the middle of being at the fair going, what do we do? trying to get the website back up, and trying to go through and where it would allow more traffic, and to be able to do that. And that was very new with me, understanding and being able to do things with the internet. And now, you know, but then I had to go through somebody else to be able to post stories and do things, and now I do all that myself and through WordPress, and it's just a completely different thing. I'm really excited about the idea of reaching a 10-year anniversary here in a couple years, and it's just, where else would you want to be besides here? I don't know. Maybe you think I'm crazy, but I have a passion for this area. So.
Well, that's all I have today. We've got a lot to do. Hope to see you guys at the fair.
Yeah, I hope to see you at the Meigs County Fair.
Want to thank Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy for sponsoring Community Spotlight. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. They've got this great showroom here, and got some beautiful vehicles in here. Like I said, they're a big help, and like I said, we want to thank all of our supporters. everybody out there, you don't understand the way it makes you feel whenever you've got the support of your hometown behind you. So, like I said, this is Brent Rose, and I'm done interviewing Carrie. And we'll see you next week on Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight.
This week's Community Spotlight is brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meg's Independent Press.